As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner YouGov offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more.
Zynga in the news. And the headline, this is directly from the press release. The headline here, Take-Two and Zynga to combine, bringing together best-in-class intellectual properties and a market-leading, diversified mobile publishing platform to enhance positioning as a global leader in interactive entertainment. Not exactly, rolling off the tongue title there. Not exactly succinct, but Take-Two buying Zynga. That's the crux of it. And they're paying, just to be clear, $12.7 billion. So they're paying $9.86 per share for each Zynga stock. And they're paying it partly in cash, partly in Take-Two stock, 1/3, 2/3, and total enterprise value on Zynga of $12.7 billion, which is a 64% premium to Zynga's closing share price on January 7th. I don't know what the share price is today. Maybe Jeff, you can take a quick look. But I'm curious what you guys think in terms of, this is a huge acquisition. Activision Blizzard bought King, which I think is maybe the closest comparable. Jeff, I know you had some thoughts in terms of comparing those two, because I think you followed these.
I covered Zynga, I covered Take-Two. This is obviously a massive deal. I think it's the biggest, actually it may be the biggest gaming acquisition of all time, up there with Bethesda, which I think was $8 billion. Supercell was something in that region. So this is the biggest of all time. Just for context, so Zynga, Take-Two paid $12.7 billion. That's about 17.5 times next year's EBITDA. It's a little less if you take into account some of the cost savings and synergies. Maybe it's around 15 times. Decently heady multiple, but around what these companies are worth. I mean, EA paid 22 times EBITDA for Glue, which was essentially a peak multiple right at the peak of COVID. Whereas Activision back in 2015 paid $4.7 billion for King, which was doing basically the same amount of EBITDA. So Zynga is doing $725 million. King was doing $700 million of EBITDA. They paid 6.5 times EBITDA. So basically less, a third of kind of on a multiple basis what Take-Two is paying. Now, that doesn't mean Take-Two is inherently overpaying. I think it's just a signal of Bobby, in this case, was very early buying King, and it was a very shrewd acquisition when people weren't really bought in on mobile and kind of the value, some of these the longevity really of some of these franchises. I know, at that point, King's Candy Crush's MAUs and DAUs had really plateaued, and people thought they were going to kind of fall off a cliff and monetization would disappear. That franchise is obviously sustained much longer than people expected, making that a great acquisition. For Take-Two, it's an interesting one. The big question in my mind, one, it's a big strategy shift. For the longest time, Take-Two has probably been the most focused on large, kind of non-recurring franchises. Of course, we all know with Rockstar, they basically come out with a game once every 7 years, and it sells a gajillion units, and they kind of live off that for the next 5 or 6 years. We know what they've done with GTA Online, Red Dead Online. So that's really been their model. And Strauss, their CEO for the longest time, has sort of poo-pooed mobile. Like he's been very skeptical on conference calls, really had never kind of bought into mobile prior to the last year or so. They had done a couple of decent-sized acquisitions over the last year, but this is a massive step. I mean, it's going to be 50% of their business now coming from mobile. So just to really, I think the word transformative is thrown around a lot in acquisitions, and it's a bit of a buzzword. I think in this case, it really is transformative. The big question for whether this will be successful or not is whether they're going to be able to use some of this Zynga mobile expertise to bring Take-Two games to mobile, which is something Activision did obviously with Call of Duty with a lot of success, but they bought King in 2015. They didn't come out with Call of Duty Mobile, I think, until 2019. And Call of Duty Mobile had nothing to do with King. It was actually built externally by Tencent. So it's not automatically clear that buying Zynga is going to all of a sudden mean, hey, we get Grand Theft Auto on mobile, which I think is what a lot of the kind of more rudimentary analysis has been around. Like, oh, this makes a ton of sense. Take-Two has great franchises. Mobile's massive, a lot of players. Bada bing, like put it together, and this is a great acquisition. I think execution will be a little more challenging than that. But just taking a step back, I mean, it's an accretive deal. It gives them scale, which is something they've been lacking. It'll help them catch up in terms of margin to their peers. And it'll smooth out a lot of their earnings variability, which has been a big problem for investors with Take-Two in terms of every year guessing, well, is there going to be a GTA this year? If not, well, maybe I don't want to own the stock because they're not going to earn that much money. Now with Zynga, they get a nice kind of smooth base of revenue and earnings that they can live off of. So that's some of my takes.
Lindsay, I'm curious if you agree with Jeff that there's nice synergies here potentially between the mobile kind of Candy Crush style game, right, that Zynga makes, even though that's a King title, but these hyper casual kind of games that Zynga makes versus Take-Two. They're really, and Jeff made the point, like when Strauss was on the podcast, he even talked about this, how this is about storytelling and experience, and they were never going to do, necessarily games as a service, even that this was all, about selling a $60 box copy because they're delivering something of value. Right. And I'm curious if you think this now seeming shift in strategy makes a lot of sense.
I suppose it depends on what the mission of the company is. I think that this is a very growth focused move. We've seen that from Activision as well, that the mobile division obviously has been performing past, I think, a lot of people's expectations. I think, as some of you all have noticed or have mentioned when we first kind of talked about this story, this is a little bit of a late move. So I don't think that obviously those margins will be as big because they're having to pay a lot more for this acquisition than Activision Blizzard had to play for King at the time that they made it. But I do think that it's possible to coexist with both having Take-Two stick to its core mission in producing story-driven games and having a wing of Zynga that is doing the hyper-casual mobile thing that's obviously been growing like crazy. So Activision obviously hasn't preserved that as well because they haven't put as much time and effort into making the storytelling games and supporting Blizzard and doing all of that, which presents its own problem. But I think it's totally possible to coexist in a world where both of these things are equally as well supported and both of them maintain or surpass their current growth expectations. It just depends on, as it always does, on how management really handles it. And I don't think that this takes away from the Take-Two brand because it's not like they're renaming it Take-Two Mobile. I don't know. I think it's so possible if you're going for a growth strategy to have two separate things that your company does. And I don't think that they have to commingle or that the perception of those two has to mix that much as long as each one is equally supported and equally successful.
The businessman in me that loves seeing growth and profit and all these kinds of things, the capitalist in me says, I like this. It makes sense. The mobile does provide a good base of revenue, right? Like there's all kinds of good business reasons. It's accretive, all those good things. I refuse to believe, like, if I were to pinpoint, and Bobby, I think Jeff gives Bobby too much credit, Bobby Kotick at Activision Blizzard. Like, I don't know if he saw the future with King. I think, we could argue he got lucky. He bought mobile when it was not nearly as popular. It could also have been total foresight, which I give him full credit if it was foresight, truly. But fundamentally, if we look at Activision Blizzard 10 or 15 years from now, I think we'll be having a different conversation, right? I think we'll look back and go, when Bobby bought King, yes, it was a good business decision at the time, but in the long run, it fundamentally destroyed the company because the culture was no longer the same. The focus wasn't the same. No one cared about making great games anymore. It was about making the next slot machine and ARPU and all these kind of things, like metrics that before, when it was about making great games, didn't really matter. And I'm exaggerating to make a point, but is there a world where, and Jimmy, question to you, I guess, is there a world where Take-Two, when we're talking about Take-Two 10 years from now, we'll be reminiscing, remember the time Take-Two used to actually make good games and not just all this mobile crap? And I fear, call it a prophecy, that is a conversation we are going to have 10 years from now. And while they may make a lot of money in the meantime, the 10 or 20 year story may be much less exciting as a result of sort of this mixed focus.
I might be the wrong guy to ask with just because the other way you phrase it, mobile crap, because we all know Paul's not a big mobile fan. I am a mobile fan, and Tencent appears to be a mobile fan, right? And now Take-Two clearly, even before this acquisition was already a mobile fan. And, what we're definitely seeing, with the creation of the metaverse and with these different communities that are being built around esports, and a similar conversation I had with an executive at Activision a number of months ago is excitement around mobile esports and around mobile gaming in general. And so this acquisition 10, 20 years in the future, I wouldn't call it mobile crap. Maybe the future of games are going to start with mobile and everything else will kind of follow suit, right? Maybe the originals are going to come out on mobile because that's where most gamers are going to be in the future. And then the PC version comes out or the console version comes out. It could totally flip on its head. So, I don't know about mobile crap. I see this as two massive companies kind of combining forces. To Jeff's point, probably the largest acquisition in the space that we've seen. I see it. This isn't some Babe Ruth calling his shot. This is undoubtedly the future of kind of where these things are headed and where these gamers are trending. And I'm probably going to disagree with that prophecy.
I don't argue that there's a place for mobile games. I just it's not Take-Two's strength, and making mobile, like, again, all you guys talked about in terms of mobile was distilled down versions of their existing IP, right? Like, maybe we'll see GTA on mobile, maybe we'll see Red Dead on mobile, maybe, right? First of all, I can make the argument that Take-Two could have saved a lot of money and gone to Tencent and just developed mobile versions of those games, right? If they really believed in the mobile story. And arguably, if you look at Activision Blizzard, that was what made Call of Duty a huge success. Like, Jeff, to your point, it wasn't King that made Call of Duty mobile. So if I'm Take-Two and I really believe the world needs GTA in a mobile version, I could have just gone to Tencent and done that, right? And not need to give up $12.7 billion. And I do strongly believe that, and we're seeing this trend where IP and original IP is what matters most, not mobile versions of IP, right? That milking IP is not what's driving value long-term for entertainment or the metaverse. Everyone's buying up and searching for like really original IP. It's why the Marvels of the world are worth what they are, and the Disneys and these kinds of things. And so I just don't see this as a smart acquisition long-term. I get why they did it. It feels a little knee-jerk, a little desperation to me. I'm surprised, given Strauss Zelnick's position. I wonder, behind closed doors, if he thinks this is a great idea or if there was just a lot of shareholder pressure to do something like this.
I was going to say the stock went down a ton actually on the news. Part of that's because, of course, there's a stock component to the deal. So there's, some arb selling, but the stock was down, I think 15 or 20, almost 20% at one point. It's actually recovered a decent amount, but It wasn't like immediate, hey, shareholders love this.
It's just
Which is
funny because
interesting.
if you're a CEO of a gaming company, public gaming company, the last person I would say to emulate is Bobby Kotick, right? Like the train, the massive railroad accident is coming, right? This is the train crash is coming for Activision Blizzard. It is coming. It's not here yet, but it's coming. And I don't know why you'd want to set yourself on that same course, like mortgaging the future of your business for short-term revenue. I mean, look, I don't deny how profitable and how valuable mobile gaming is and can be. I just don't understand why, when your core business is building great stories, great experiences, all those things, when those things are the core of who you are as a company, it just feels wrong. This feels totally antithetical to everything you've tried to build over the last 20 years. And I can almost guarantee this will go down as a mistake, especially at the price they paid, which it's not crazy to Jeff's point, but still rich.